All right, midweek number 3. Let's do some review. So, true or false? A verb can consist of more than one word. Well, if you have your action verb plus some linking verbs, then absolutely it could have more than one word to it. So that is very true. Can the main verb be separated from its helper verb by other words? So say like if you had it phrased like a question like, can I get some milk? Can and get would be your verbs there. So yes, it absolutely can be separated. You could also have like an adverb coming in between it if you wanted to. The subject of a sentence always comes ahead of the verb in a sentence. Well, like I just said with the question example. Is that always true? No, so that is false. A lot of times it is true that the subject is going to come first, but not always. And you are less likely to make a mistake in selecting the subject and the verb if you select which of those two things first, the subject or the verb. My recommendation, always look for the verb first. Once you know the action, it's a lot easier to figure out what is doing that action. Sorry. The 3 verbs that can either be a linking verb, a helping verb, or be just the main verb by itself. There are 3. The one is the most important verb in the English language, and I told you to memorize it. If you know Hamlet, to blank or not to blank? That is the question. Shakespeare. The answer is to be. So be is one of them. The other 2, if I said like I did my homework, so did, do, does, right? So form of do. And then I have homework, right? Have, has, had would be the other ones. So you have be, do, and have. And then the 6 forms of be, which if you don't have them memorized yet, memorize them. They will never, ever, ever go away. We'll talk about them your senior year too. If you don't know what they are though, right, try filling in the blanks. If I say he blank awesome, present tense, he is awesome. I blank awesome, I am awesome. We blank awesome, we are awesome. So is, am, are. And then in past tense, he blank awesome, he was awesome. We blank awesome, we were awesome. And we have been awesome. So is, am, are, was, were, and been are the forms of be. If you don't have them memorized yet, get going on that. So, today we're looking at our simple sentences, and we know that nearly every simple sentence that we make will fall into one of 3 basic patterns. 2 of those patterns that we're going to be looking at today involve action verbs, okay? So, if we have the verbs was, pushed, and seemed, of those 3, which one indicates an action that the body can do? You can obviously push something. So some action verbs indicate actions of the body, but others indicate actions of the mind. Why am I yawning so much? Apologies. Okay, so if A is worked, drove, washed, wrote, lifted, versus B, thought, hoped, believed, decided, understood, which of those 2 groups indicate something that your mind can do, but your body physically cannot? It would have to be B. Regardless, though, all of those words are action verbs. They're all things that can be done. So, action verbs can sometimes make complete statements about their subjects without the need of any other words. Basically, what that means is if you have your subject and you have your verb, you can have a complete sentence. You might not need any extra words to make the sentence make sense. So if Harvey stumbled versus Harvey sharpened, of the 2, does the action verb make a complete statement about the subject in A or in B? The answer is A. Harvey stumbled by itself makes sense. But Harvey sharpened ... We're missing a word here. We don't know what the heck he sharpened, right? We need more information. Our guest brought versus our guest arrived. So of those 2, does the action verb make a complete statement about the subject in A or in B? Basically, which of those 2 is a complete sentence? The answer is B. If I went up to you and said, our guest arrived, you'd be like, okay, cool. But if I said, our guest brought, and just left it like that, you'd be like, brought what? Right? There's more information needed for it to be a complete sentence. So this brings us to our first pattern sentence, which I want you to circle star highlight. And that pattern is when you have a subject and then you have an action verb. And that's pretty much it. So any sentence is going to be in pattern 1 if the action verb by itself makes a complete statement about the subject. No matter how many other words or phrases might be present in the sentence, as long as the subject and verb by itself makes sense as a sentence, it's pattern 1. So if we look at our guest arrived versus our guest from Ohio arrived by plane this morning, both of those sentences have the same subject, guest, and they both have the same verb, arrived. There it is, arrived. Okay. So do they both have a subject and an action verb? Yes. Are they both pattern 1 sentences? Yes. Even though B has from Ohio or by plane this morning, that extra information does not matter. As long as our guest arrived still makes sense by itself, it's a pattern 1 sentence. Okay. So our guest from Ohio arrived by plane this morning. So this is a pattern 1 sentence because if we took out the extra fluffy stuff, we would just be left with our guest arrived. And by itself, is it complete or incomplete in meaning? It is complete. It makes sense by itself. Okay? So the coaches agreed with each other. The coaches compared the two teams. So if we are going to figure out which one is a pattern 1 sentence, we need to just look at the verb and the subject. And remember, always go for the verb first. So if we have agreed and the coaches, and compared and the coaches. So the coaches agreed versus the coaches compared. Of the two, which one is pattern 1? Because by itself, it's a complete sentence. I hope you said A, because that would be correct. Even with each other, does not matter. The coaches agreed by itself makes sense. But the coaches compared by itself does not make sense. We don't know what they compared. It could be they're comparing the fans, the stadiums, the teams, their mascots, their salaries, whatever the heck it is they're comparing. We don't know it yet. So therefore, this sentence by itself is incomplete in its meaning. So, the coaches compared the two teams. Now we know what the coaches compared, meaning that the sentence is now complete. So which word completes that sentence to tell us what the coaches compared? What noun? Teams. So, circle star highlight. This is an important definition. A word that follows a verb and completes the meaning of a sentence is known as a complement, which is basically just a fancy grammar name for it completes the sentence. It's a completer. Notice this complement is spelled with an E, not an I. If it's with an I, that's like you give someone a compliment, like, oh, you're really smart. But complement with an E means like it completes it, okay? So the word, the end of the sentence that completes the meaning of the verb, like teams, would be the complement. So the police blocked the road. So we need to figure out what the complement is in this sentence. The easiest way to do this, as always, is find the verb first. So what's the action word here? Blocked. Okay, then you got to try to figure out what the subject is. So who or what is blocking? That would be the police. Okay, so then the complement tells us what the police are blocking, which would be the noun road. So road would be the complement of this sentence. If I took that out, I'd just have the police blocked, which wouldn't make sense by itself. So we need that complement of road to finish off the sentence. Hopefully that makes sense so far. This is hard without seeing your faces or hearing your questions. Okay, so big definition to circle to highlight. This will never go away. We'll still talk about it your senior year. A kind of complement that receives the action of the verb or shows the result of this action is called a direct object. Okay? So there's two types of complements. One of those complements to complete the sentence is called a direct object. Basically what this means is the action is done to something else, right? Like if I threw a pen, throwing is the action. Who is throwing? I am throwing. What am I throwing? The direct object of pen. So with this sentence, the teacher will correct the test. So you start off with finding your action. What's my action here? Will correct. Who will correct? That tells me the subject, which the answer is teacher. But what will the teacher correct? That answer gives us the direct object. So what will the teacher correct? Those tests. Notice test is a noun. Your direct object is only ever going to be a noun or pronoun. So like if the teacher will correct it, it would be considered the direct object. We'll do another example. The cashier made a slight mistake. So again, to find the direct object, you first want to find the verb, which is made. Who made? That tells us the subject. The cashier made. But what did the cashier make? He or she made a mistake. So that would be the direct object. If we didn't have that direct object there, it would just be the cashier made, and it's like, well, I don't know what the heck they made because the rest of the sentence is gone. So we need the direct object to finish off the sentence. So Karen ripped up the Post-it note. So in order to figure out the direct object, as always, like I said, figure out what the verb is first. The action here is ripped. Who ripped? Karen ripped, so she's my subject. What did she rip? She ripped up the direct object of note. You could say post-it note if you really, really want, but post-it would just be an adjective, so really just the noun would be note. Okay, so that brings us to our second sentence pattern to circle, star, highlight. That is where you have your subject and your action verb, always going to be an action verb no matter what, but there's going to be the direct object to finish off the sentence. So an example of this, the speaker showed a movie of his travels. So if we want to figure out what the direct object is, like I said, always start off with the action verb. So what's my action? Showed. Then figure out the subject. Who showed? The speaker showed. But notice there's two nouns over here. There's movie and there's travels. So to figure out which one is the direct object, we got to ask, what did the speaker show? Did the speaker show a movie or did the speaker show travels? And that would be movie. The speaker showed a movie that just happened to be about his travels. So direct object would be movie. So if we have Pandora kicked the tennis ball, again we have our verb kicked. Who kicked? Subject Pandora. What did she kick? She kicked the direct object of ball, tennis ball. Alright, so to be a direct object, a word must either receive the action of the verb or show the result of that action. Okay, so the action is always done to a noun that tells us what the action is being done to. So if Mr. Price returned recently versus Mr. Price returned the money, which of those two words receives the action of the verb returned? Did he return recently or did he return the money? Okay, so which one is a noun? That would have to be money. Returned, who returned? Mr. Price returned. What did he return? Money. But if we did returned, Mr. Price returned, what did he return recently? That doesn't make any sense. So it has to be a noun. The rain stopped the game. The rain stopped suddenly. So which one contains a direct object because it's receiving the action of the rain stopping it? And that would have to be A, with the direct object of game. Okay, so really the difference between the pattern 2 sentences, they both have a subject, they both have an action verb, but pattern 2 has the direct object to complete the sentence. Without it, it will not make sense. So if we have all good citizens vote on election day versus all good citizens cast their vote on election day. In order to figure out which one is pattern 2, again, we have to check with the verbs. Okay, so with A, we have vote. Who is voting? Citizens are voting. What are they voting? There's not really a what they're voting. We know when they're voting, but it's not a what they're voting. With B, what's the verb there? Cast. Who cast? Citizens cast. What did they cast? They cast a vote. So in this case, B does have a direct object. the word vote. Okay? It tells us what they are casting. Each student keeps a list of every misspelled word. The wheezing motor finally stopped completely. So I want you guys to try to figure out this one yourselves. Which one is a pattern 2 sentence because that verb is followed by a direct object? Take a second to figure it out. So look at my cat looking adorable. Alright, so which one? So let's look at the verbs. We have keeps, who keeps, students. What do they keep? They keep a list. Versus stopped, what stopped? The motor stopped. What did the motor stop? We don't really know. So it'd have to be A, with the direct object being the word list. Okay, so the pitcher threw Josh a fast curve. So we have the verb threw, who threw, subject, pitcher. But then we got two nouns over here. We have Josh and we have curve. So you have to ask yourself, what did the pitcher throw? Did the pitcher throw Josh? Physically picked him up and tossed him over to the batter? Or did the pitcher throw a curve? So the direct object obviously would have to be curve. That is what the pitcher directly threw. But the noun Josh also does have a role, okay? It tells us to whom that pitcher threw the curve. So, because it's not directly receiving the action, we call it an indirect object, which I want you to circle star highlight, okay? It tells us to whom that fast curve was thrown. Notice that indirect object Josh, does it come before or after the direct object of curve? It comes before it. I don't know why I keep yawning so much. I'm sorry. It comes before it, and it always, always, always will come before the direct object. So circles are highlight this. An indirect object can show to what as well as to whom something was done. Okay, so if we have the nouns support and feet in this sentence, I want to know which one is the direct object versus the indirect. So the way that I do it is figure out my pattern. I start off with my verb, give. What gives? My subject, shoes give. What do my shoes give? They give support. So they directly give me support. So support has to be my direct object. But what do they give support to? They give it to my poor feet. So feet would have to be my indirect object. Notice it comes before support. Same thing with this one. We gave the kids cookies. So we got noun cookies and kids. So what's my verb here? Gave. Who gave? We gave. What did we give? We directly gave cookies. So direct object. Who did we give these cookies to though? The indirect object of kids. Okay? And there are answers if you need them. Moving right along. Besides showing to whom or to what something was done, indirect objects can also show for whom or for what something was done. So if I have the incredibly talented Patrick Stump sang us a song, right? So we start off with the verb sang, who sang, subject Patrick Stump sang. What did he sing? He sang a song. And who did he sing it for? For us. So song would have to be my direct object. Us would be my indirect. And like I said before, as it always, 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 always does when it's present, your indirect object will always come before the direct object. You won't see it coming afterwards, okay? Now, an indirect object does not have to be present. I could have just said Patrick Stump sang a song. I don't need that indirect object there. It's just extra information. So if you can take it out and the sentence still makes sense, chances are you have the indirect object. So an indirect object, when it's present, always comes before the direct object, and the word to or for is understood, but it's never used with it, okay? Circle, star, highlight that. That's important. So I offered Eric my ticket versus I offered my ticket to Eric, okay? Now they're both saying the same essential thing, but one has an indirect object, one does not. So to check ourselves, we have offered. Who offered? I offered. That's true for both sentences. What did I offer in A? I offered my ticket. What did I offer in B? I offered my ticket. So direct object is the same. But which one has an indirect object? Remember, indirect object has to come in front of it. So A has Eric being my indirect object. B, this is actually a prepositional phrase, which we'll get to later. But even though Eric is there, since it comes after the direct object, not an indirect object. Okay, so an indirect object tells to whom or for whom by its position alone. Position is very important in the English language. A noun or pronoun used with the word to or for is never going to be an indirect object. That's going to be something different that we'll get to later. So Stacy found a better job for her friend versus Stacy found her friend a better job. Both sentences have the word friend in it, but of the two, which one has it being an indirect object? I want you guys to take your best guess. Figure it out. I'm going to check my phone very quickly. Alright, so which one? It would have to be B. Here's why. You got your verb of found. Who found? Subject. Stacy found. What did she find? She found a job. Direct object. Who did she find it for? Her indirect object, friend. Okay? So it'd have to be B. Alright, so same thing here. This machine will save much time. This machine will save the company much time. So the noun time is the direct object in both sentences, but which sentence also contains an indirect object? Who is the machine saving time for? And that would have to be B with the indirect object of company. Okay? So we're going to fill these out. Remember, always find the verb first. That's the easiest way to do it. So father made the boys some sandwiches. So what's my verb? What's my action? That would have to be made. Then my subject. Who made? Father made. Direct object. What did he make? He made sandwiches. Indirect object. Who did he make them for? For the boys. Okay? This bakery makes the best donuts in town. So as always, find the verb. Makes. Subject. Who makes? Bakery makes. What does the bakery make? Does it make donuts or does it make town? It makes the donuts. Yay, it's a direct object. Anyone can show you the way to the bridge. So my verbs here, my action and linking verbs. Can show. Who can show? Subject. Anyone can show. What can anyone show? They're going to show the direct object way. And who are they going to show it to? They're going to show it to the indirect object of you. Okay? So there are those answers if you need them. Just pause the video because I'm going to move on. Franklin's experiments with electricity brought him international fame. So again, start off with the verb. Now, be careful. Experiments isn't the verb here, right? It's a noun. It's Franklin's experiments. So what is the actual action here? Brought. Okay, so who or what brought is experiments. So subject, experiments brought. What did they bring? They brought direct object, fame. Who did they bring that fame to? To him, your indirect object. Not to Franklin's because there's that apostrophe S there. Mr. Martin gave the trumpet section their sheet music. What's my action here? Gave, that's my verb. Who gave? Subject, Mr. Martin gave. What did he give? He gave music, direct object. Who did he give it to? That section, specifically the trumpet section. So indirect object. Okay, so if you have questions about all that, let me know. I think I do want to show you guys a separate video with that chart just so it's kind of clear. Maybe write that chart down on your midweek because it will help with the worksheet. Okay, so let me stop this here.